Alright, the automatic split reduction during the penalty brake application with the A1 reduction selector valve of the plate 11. The A1 reduction selector valve is a device when using the P2A brake application. The first suppression reservoir is associated with the cutout cock of the in junction with the basic 26L brake equipment. The function to produce the split reduction during the braking application. The cutout cock of the conjunction with the first suppression reserve as the plug type as the echelon plate, designating in the two-position normally freight and passenger, which cut out cock of the handle of the freight position. First suppression reservoir is provided with the split reduction with the cutout cock of the handle of the passenger position, the reserve cutout, and the straightaway reduction result. The first suppression reservoir contains the volume of the air brake pipe pressure whenever the equipment is contained with the freight surface of the venting over the predetermined time period provides the first part of the split reduction during the penalty brake application. The manner of the A1 reduction selector valve is associated with the device period with the basic 26L brake equipment shown in plate 11. Referring to the figure 10 of the A1 reduction selector valve consists of the charging bore valve with the portion of selection split reduction valve portion of the mounted on a common pipe bracket in which all pipe connections are made and identified as 1 brake pipes, 3-bit switch pipe, 10 of the application pipe, 15 equalizing reserve charge pipe, 17 brake pipe exhaust blanked, 23 first suppression reserve, 24 reduction limiting reserve, 25 power knockout, 26 suppression pipe, 41 suppression gauge connection blanked, and 42 stop reserve. The charging valve portion permits the charging of the first suppression reserve so long as it's associated with the cutout cock of the position with the freight surface with the automatic brake valve handled in the release position. Dynamic brake valve initiated with the brake handles. Application reserve volume exhausted with the atmosphere, but past the charging of the valve to ensure the penalty brake application should be initiated on the top of the brake application. The automatic split reduction will be notified and the straightaway reduction will be result. This shows the charging of the valve portion, split valve with the reduction portion, a charging valve, a differential check valve, a reducing limiting valve with the split reduction spool valve, and the split reduction diaphragm, and the legend. An A1 reduction selector valve. This is what it looks like. All right. Split reduction portion function to determine the brake application to the first time. Terminate change of the first suppression reserve to employ the volume of the air to divide the equalizing reservoir pressure reduction of the two distinct stages of the first, which has the approximately 78 psi reduction before the commencing of the second and last stage. Reduction will continue until the brake valve handle is move to the suppression position. Operation. Release and charging. The 26C brake valve is release position of the handle of the cutout cock with the pipeline with the first suppression reserve at the freight position. Main reserve air flows from the port number 3 of the brake valve of the port number 3 and the A1 reduction selector valve to the chamber beneath the charging valve of the spool valve. The position of the valve uppermost position is shown in figure 10. The brake pipe air flows to the port number 1 of the reduction selector valve pipe bracket where it flows from the charging valve spool to number 22 to the splitting reduction spool valve. Spring tension holds the valve reduction spool valve into the lower position connecting ports number 23 and 22, thereby charging the first suppression reserve to the brake pipe pressure. Port number 15 is being connected with the equalizing reserve charging pipe through the 26C brake valve, and the P2A brake application valve is charged with the equalizing reserve pressure. Port number 26 is connected to the port number 26 at the 26C brake valve, and P2A brake application valve is vented with the brake valve handle in the release position. The ports number 24 and 25 are connected to the ports number 24 and 25 respectively at the P2A brake application valve are atmospheric pressure and no penalty brake and application in effect. The split reduction valve portion functions the penalty brake application first terminate a charging first suppression valve reserve to employ the valve air in the equalizer reserve pressure reduction into two distinct stages. First, which will result in approximately 78 psi reduction connecting the commenced and last stage production will continue until the brake valve handle is suppression position. All right. I believe we're on this part. The operation releasing and change charging the 26 brake valve handle in the release position handle of the cutout cock pipe in the first suppression reserve in the freight position of the main reserve flows to the port number 3 of the brake valve at the port number 3 into the A1 reduction selector valve at the chamber beneath the charging valve at the spool and valve at the uppermost position is shown in figure 10. Brake pipe air flows to the port number 1 reduction selector valve pipe at the bracket where the flows to the charging valve at the spool vorts in port number 22 through the spool reduction spool valve. The spring tension holds the split reduction spool valve into the lowermost position connecting the port number 22 and 23, thereby charging the suppression reservoir to the brake pipe air pressure the brake pipe pressure. Number 15 port being connected to the equalizing reserve charging pipe for the 26C brake valve of the P2 brake application valve is charged with the equalizing reserve port pressure. The port number 26 is connected to the port number 26. The 26 brake valve, the P2 brake application valve is vented with the brake valve handle in the release position. Ports number 24 and 25 are connected to ports number 24 and 25 respectively at the P2 brake application valve with the atmospheric pressure. No penalty brake application in effect. Penalty brake application actuating the P2A brake application valve with the functioning over the speed of the control and safety control venting device will cause the A1 reduction selector to split the equalizing reserve to reduction air from the number 25 import into the P2A brake application valve with the flow through the port number 25 into the A1 reduction selector of the valve on the underside of the split reduction spool valve. Thus, the spool valve against the spring tension uppermost position. This position of the spool valve, first suppression reservoir terminated with the air from this reservoir is via volume connected with the VIVA, the port number 31 chamber beneath the split reduction diaphragm volume. The split reduction diaphragm valve spool valve is moved upwardly in the closing the connection ports between number 24 and 24B. Equalizing reserve equalizes the confined number 24 pipe valve and reduction limiting reserve between the P2A application valve and the split reduction diaphragm valve with the A1 reduction selector valve. The produce the first step in the split reduction number 24 pipe between the two valve devices must be specified length depending upon its pipe size so as the provided volume that is produced in an initially equalizing reservoir reduction of approximately 7 to 8 PSI. A split reduction diaphragm valve is held in the uppermost position until the pressure of the first suppression reservoir valve has reduced to a sufficiently low valve with the venting of the atmosphere with the calibrated choke for the diaphragm covered, causing the bring into tension the move valve in the lowermost position, reestablishing the connection between ports of 24 and 24B. This occurs the second and final step of the split reduction accomplished with the continued exhausting of the equalizing reservoir air atmosphere at the surface of the rate of the view of the portion number 24 and 24B to the post end of the reduction, limiting the valve to produce full surface brake application. A minimum reduction first part of the split reduction following the penalty of the brake of the application can be avoided. However, the full surface brake application may be avoided moving the automatic brake valve handle to the suppression position before expiration approximately 20 seconds after the initiating of the penalty brake application. This 20 second is approximately the delay time before the start of the second part of the split reduction. Moving the brake valve handle to the suppression position permits the air to the main reserve pressure to flow from the port number 26 of the brake valve through the port number 26 to the A1 reduction selector valve, causing the reduction limiting the valve to move against the spring tension to its uppermost position to close off the exhausted air equalizing reserve air pressure from port number 24B. Also, the brake valve handle into the suppression position. Air is exchanged from port number 3, allowing the charging valve to be moved downward into the spring tension. This closes the brake pipe port number 1 at the charging valve and the exhaust ports number 22. If the P2 brake A brake application is reset to delay time, the split reduction spool valve will reestablish the port number 23 to port number 22 connection. As a result of ventilating the air from port number 25, underside of the spool the spool valve of the P2A brake application, the air of the first suppression reservoir is exhausted past the upper end of the valve of the VIVA, the port number 22, equalizing the reserve air port of the number 24 is equalized and exhausted as the spool valve of the braking application valve of the port number 5, equalizing reserve as bottled up and release control valve of the brake application. Immediately following the reset of the P2A brake application valve movement of the brake valve handle the release position. It will actuate the release control valve to reestablish the port of number 15, the port number 5 connection with the brake application valve to permit the release of the brakes. If the P2A brake application valve does not reset within the delay time period, the entire supply of the air of the first suppression reserve will have to be exhausted through the time choking located with the cover of beneath the split reduction diaphragm valve. The valve will then be moved downward in the spring tension to reestablish the port number 24 to port number 24B connection around its spool valve. Since the air brake valve handle has been replaced on the suppression position, equalizing reserve air cannot be vented into the atmosphere past the upper end of the reduction limiting valve. However, equalizing reserve air in port number 24B can flow past the light spring-loaded differential check valve into the port number 15 since the air pressure in that port has been reduced to approximately 24 psi with the brake valve handling the suppression position. Equalizer reserve air that can therefore flow through the equalizing reserve charging line with the result in the full service brake application, which is ensured by the during a penalty brake application. Should it become necessary for an over reduction, can be the following split off reduction, making the automatic brake valve handle further towards the handle off in position when equalizing reserve charging port number 15 exhausted at the brake valve beyond the full service reduction to 0 in the handle off position, so long as the B2A brake application valve has not been reset. Equalizing reserve air in port number 5 and the brake application valve will flow through ports number 24 and 24B in the A1 reduction selector valve. Position the differential check valve into the equalizing reserve charging port number 15. Hence, the brake valve exhaust into the P2A brake application valve has been reset. The function will be nullified at the A1 reduction selector valve, but will be taken over by the over reduction check of the valve located in the P2A brake application valve. If the penalty brake application is initiated on the top of the brake of the valve, service of the brake application, thereby no split reduction because of the port number 3 has been exhausted at the brake valve, permits the exhaustion of the air of the first suppression reserve past the charging of the valve at the Air 1 reduction selector valve. Equalizing reserve air will be then exhausted the atmosphere past the reduction limited valve via the ports number 24 and B and 24. Automatic split reductions during a penalty brake application and temporary suppression over speed control applications with the A2 reduction selector valve. Page 50.